The return of the humans. For 20,000 years, humanity had been a mystery. Their cities were now dust, their ships nothing but forgotten relics floating in the vastness of space. The galaxy had moved on without them. The great civilizations that once ruled the stars were gone, and no one knew why. Silence echoed in every corner of the universe, a haunting reminder of the humans who had disappeared so suddenly. But all of that changed the moment a single ship appeared on the edge of the galaxy. It wasn't just any ship. It was ancient, worn, and drifting aimlessly through space like a ghost. This wasn't a ship that anyone had expected to see again. It had been lost, along with humanity, long ago. It was a relic, a piece of history that had somehow managed to survive the ravages of time. The ship's metal surface was dented, its engines cold, but still, it moved through the darkness like something alive, something waiting to be awakened. At first, the ship was dismissed as just another derelict, an abandoned hulk floating in the void. However, something about it didn't seem right. It was as though it was more than just a machine. It was a message, a sign. And soon, people began to take notice. A group of explorers, curious and brave, set their sights on the ship. They had heard the legends of humanity's rise and fall, of their greatness and their sudden disappearance. But no one had ever imagined they would see anything from humanity again. The explorers traveled through space in their own ship, their hearts pounding with excitement and fear. What would they find on that ghost ship? Was there anyone left alive? Or was this ship just another monument to the lost history of humankind? As they approached, the eerie silence that had once filled space seemed to grow even heavier. The ghost ship loomed in front of them, massive and foreboding. It was shaped like no ship they had ever seen before. The design was elegant but strange, with twisting metal corridors and sharp angles that seemed to defy logic. It was unlike any technology they knew, yet there was something deeply familiar about it. The explorers docked their ship beside the ghost ship, their hearts racing. They slowly made their way inside, their footsteps echoing in the empty halls. The air inside was stale, thick with the dust of centuries. It was as if no one had walked these corridors in thousands of years. But as they ventured deeper into the ship, strange things began to happen. The lights flickered on, and the walls hummed with a low vibration, as if the ship was waking up. A soft, mechanical voice suddenly echoed through the ship, startling the explorers. It wasn't human, but it was unmistakably familiar. It was the voice of a ship's AI, one that had been dormant for millennia. It spoke in a language that the explorers couldn't understand at first, but as they listened more closely, the words began to make sense. The AI was speaking in fragments, as if it was trying to remember something that had been lost. The voice told them something shocking. Humanity had not disappeared. They had been waiting, hiding in the far corners of the galaxy, waiting for the right moment to return. The ship wasn't a relic. It was a signal, a beacon sent out to call them home. The explorers felt a chill run down their spines. The implications were staggering. What did this mean? Had humanity really been hiding all this time? Were they still out there, somewhere in the stars, waiting for their moment to come back? As the explorers continued to explore the ship, they began to uncover more about its history. The ship's logs revealed incredible stories of the human race, of their rise to power and their eventual fall. But what was most surprising was that the ship was not the only one. There were dozens of ships hidden across the galaxy, all waiting for the same thing, the return of humanity. The explorers began to piece together the truth. Humanity had not disappeared in some tragic disaster. No, they had left willingly, retreating into the depths of space to wait for a time when they could return and reclaim what was once theirs. But why had they left? What had driven them to disappear without a trace? As they delved deeper into the ship, the answers began to reveal themselves. The humans hadn't vanished because they were destroyed. They had left because they had reached the peak of their power. They had become too powerful, too advanced, and feared that their return would only bring chaos to the galaxy. They had chosen to vanish, to disappear into the shadows of space, and leave the galaxy to grow in their absence. But now, that silence was over. The time had come for humanity to return. The ship's AI continued to speak, its voice now filled with urgency. It told the explorers that the human race was coming back, but there was something more. A darkness, an enemy that had followed them across the stars, waiting for the right moment to strike. This enemy was powerful, and it had been hunting humanity. For centuries, the explorers were faced with a difficult choice. Should they try to stop humanity from returning, knowing that it could bring disaster? Or should they help them, knowing that humanity's return might just be the spark needed to bring the galaxy back to life? As the ship's engines roared to life, the explorers could feel the weight of the decision upon them. The ghost ship was no longer a forgotten relic. It was a signal, a call to action. Humanity was coming back. And whether the galaxy was ready or not, they would soon know what had been lost and what was about to return. The darkness of the past was awakening, and the galaxy was about to face the consequences of humanity's long-awaited return. Asterisk. Ghost Ship's secret. The explorers stood at the threshold of the ship's command center, their breath shallow with anticipation. The AI's voice had stopped echoing, replaced by an unsettling silence. The once dormant ship seemed to pulse with an eerie energy, as if it were alive and aware of their presence. Outside the ship, the vast, cold emptiness of space stretched infinitely, but inside, the air felt charged, heavy with the weight of forgotten knowledge and ancient power. The command center was enormous, stretching across the width of the ship like the heart of a giant. The walls were lined with strange, glowing symbols, constantly shifting, almost as if they were alive. The technology was unlike anything the explorers had ever encountered. While their own ships were sleek and modern, this one felt ancient yet, advanced beyond their wildest dreams. It was a paradox, a ship caught between the past and the future. In the center of the room was a massive holographic display, showing a map of the galaxy. The explorers gathered around it, their eyes wide with wonder. They were looking at something extraordinary, an ancient map that had not just marked the galaxy, but charted it in ways no one had ever thought possible. "This isn't just a map," one of the explorers, Lieutenant Rhea, murmured. "It's a guide, a pathway." The ship's AI flickered to life again, its voice now more coherent. "You are correct, Lieutenant Rhea. This map is more than a guide. It is a record of humanity's greatest journey of their retreat from the galaxy." "Retreat?" Another explorer, Dr. Keon, asked, his voice filled with disbelief. "But why? What could have caused humanity to leave everything behind?" "They had the power to rule the stars." The AI's response was chilling. "Not all who are powerful choose to rule. Some choose to hide, to vanish from the reach of those who would seek to destroy them. Humanity left because they had seen a great darkness on the horizon, a force that would stop at nothing to obliterate everything they had built." The explorers exchanged uneasy glances. The darkness the AI spoke of sounded ominous, like a shadow that had been stalking the galaxy for eons. But who or what could be powerful enough to drive an entire civilization to disappear without a trace? Suddenly, the holographic map flickered, zooming in on a distant sector of the galaxy. The area was marked with a series of warnings read. Blinking symbols. The AI's voice spoke again, this time with urgency. "Here," it said, "the human race retreated to this sector, a place beyond the reach of their enemies. They thought they could hide forever, but the enemy followed." A series of images flashed across the map. Strange, twisted creatures beings, of shadow and smoke moving through the stars like predators stalking their prey. Their forms were almost impossible to comprehend, a blur of darkness that seemed to distort the fabric of reality itself. As the explorers watched, a chill ran down their spines. "What are these things?" asked Dr. Kian, his voice barely a whisper. The AI hesitated for a moment before responding. "They are the remnants of a civilization far older than humanity's. The Forgotten Ones. They existed long before humans even dreamed of the stars. And they were the ones who forced humanity to leave." "Are they still out there?" Lieutenant Rhea asked, her voice steady, but her hands trembling. "They are always watching," the AI replied. Waiting. A cold silence fell over the group as they absorbed the weight of the information. These beings, the Forgotten Ones, had been the true reason humanity had vanished. But why had they left these warnings? Why had they kept their ships hidden, waiting to return? Before anyone could "This," the AI said, "is the key, the weapon, the last defense of humanity." The explorers slowly approached, their feet hesitant as they moved into the chamber. The throne was like a fusion of technology and organic material, something that was both machine and living entity. The energy emanating from it was unlike anything they had ever felt, raw and untamed. "What is it?" Lieutenant Rhea asked, her voice barely audible. "This," the AI replied, "is what humanity used to seal their fate. It is the power that defeated the Forgotten Ones. The weapon that once activated can destroy them once and for all." "But why is it dormant?" Dr. Kian asked. "Because humanity chose to hide it. They chose to lock away their greatest weapon, fearing that its power would be too dangerous, even for them." The explorers stood in silence, their minds racing. The weapon could save the galaxy, but at what cost? And if humanity had left it behind, what had changed? Why was the time now right to unlock it? The AI paused, as if it was waiting for them to make a decision. "The weapon is ready, but its use will come with great consequences. Will you awaken it? Will you bring humanity back to the stars?" A deep, uneasy silence filled the room. The explorers were faced with a choice that would change the fate of the galaxy forever. The ghost ship had brought them this far. But now, they had to decide whether they would use humanity's last weapon to face the darkness, or leave it sealed, forever hidden in the shadows. The moment of truth was at hand. This part builds the mystery of the ghost ship while introducing powerful elements that could shape the course of the story. It creates more intrigue around the ancient conflict and sets the stage for the explorers' decision to unlock or contain humanity's legacy. The awakening of the legacy, the room pulsed with a strange energy, as if the very air itself was holding its breath. The explorers stood frozen, their eyes locked on the dormant weapon that lay before them. The silence of space seemed to wrap around them, thick and suffocating. Time felt like it was stretching, each passing second heavier than the last. Their decision weighed on them, and the gravity of what they had uncovered was almost too much to bear. "You cannot hide from what is coming," the AI's voice echoed in the cold room, its tone more insistent now. "The Forgotten Ones will not let you. Humanity may have hidden, but they cannot stay hidden forever. The time to act is now." Lieutenant Rhea, her brow furrowed with uncertainty, took a step closer to the throne-like weapon. The air around it was thick with power, but it also felt like a trap, something ancient and dark that had been buried for a reason. "What do we do?" Rhea whispered, her voice uncertain. Dr. Kian, his scientific curiosity outweighing his fear, stepped forward next, studying the weapon. "This isn't just technology. It's alive. In some way. I've never seen anything like it." The ship's AI responded, almost too calmly. "This weapon was created by humanity not just to fight, but to end their own reign." a failsafe. The Forgotten Ones forced humanity into a war, but humanity realized they were no longer in control. They built the weapon to protect not only the galaxy, but themselves from their own ambitions. The weight of that revelation fell over the group like a hammer. Humanity, the once mighty species that had conquered the stars, had created a weapon capable of wiping out even their own civilization. It was not just a tool for survival. It was a tool for destruction, for ensuring that no one, not even themselves, could hold ultimate power. Rhea clenched her fists. And now we have to decide if we should bring them back? The same humanity that created this ... weapon? Dr. Kian, more determined than ever, turned toward Rhea. If we awaken this weapon, humanity's return may mean the salvation of the galaxy. But if we leave it sealed, we risk the galaxy falling into the hands of the Forgotten Ones. A strange hum began to fill the room, like an energy being drawn from deep within the weapon itself. It pulsed with life, almost as if it were responding to their conversation. A holographic map, still hovering in midair, flickered and shifted, showing distant planets, old war zones, and forgotten ships hidden in the shadows of the galaxy. They had all been marked with the same symbol and ancient seal that meant sanctuary, a place of refuge for humanity's greatest secrets. The weapon was not alone. It was a part of a much larger plan. Humanity didn't just disappear. Kian sighed, his voice growing stronger. They built a network of these sanctuaries, scattered throughout the galaxy, each holding a piece of their power. What if this ship is just the first? Rhea stared at the map, the enormity of their discovery sinking in. So what you're saying is that we're not just dealing with a weapon. We're dealing with an entire network, humanity's last stand, their ultimate defense. If we awaken this weapon, we could unlock the entire legacy of their civilization. The ship's eye chimed in again, its voice soft but filled with urgency. Indeed, this is the first step, but there is a price to pay. The Forgotten Ones have been waiting for this moment. They are already moving toward your location. And once the weapon is activated, you will no longer be able to hide. The legacy of humanity, for better or worse, will be unleashed. Rhea took a deep breath. The choice before them had never been so clear. They could either lock away humanity's past forever, keeping the universe safe from its terrifying potential, or they could release it, unleashing a force that could reshape the galaxy, either saving it from the shadows or plunging it into an even darker abyss. The decision was made, not in words, but in the silence that followed. Rhea, her hand trembling slightly, reached out to activate the weapon. The moment her fingers touched the control panel, a burst of light erupted from the throne, blinding them all. The ship seemed to come alive, its walls vibrating as energy surged through its circuits. The entire room hummed with power. The weapon's core began to glow, and from within its heart, a human voice spoke. Awakened at last... The cycle begins again. It was the voice of a human, but it was distant, distorted. The explorers watched in awe as the weapon pulsed brighter, the walls of the chamber shifting and rearranging as if responding to the awakening. Then, without warning, the map expanded, showing a series of unknown, uncharted sectors of space. Each was marked with the same symbol, the symbol of humanity's last stronghold. The AI's voice returned, this time with a hint of sorrow. You have awakened the legacy. But be warned, the Forgotten Ones will not wait. They will come, and they will not be merciful. What lies ahead is unknown. The explorers stared at the map, now marked with the coordinates of the ancient sanctuaries. Some of them, deep within the outer rim of the galaxy, seemed to be moving alive, responding to the activation. The thought that humanity had spread its greatest secrets across the galaxy, ensuring its survival no matter what, both terrified and awed them. "What do we do now?" Rhea asked, her voice breaking the silence. The AI replied, its tone grave. "Now, you must decide whether to follow the path laid out before you. The sanctuaries are ready, but so are the Forgotten Ones. The true battle for the galaxy is about to begin." As the explorers looked at the map, they realized that the awakening of humanity's legacy had set in motion something far greater than they could have imagined. The weapon had been activated, but it was only the beginning. The galaxy was about to face its greatest challenge, the return of humanity, the rise of the Forgotten Ones, and the fate of everything in between. In this part, the story delves deeper into the mystery of humanity's legacy, revealing more about their plans and the consequences of awakening their hidden weapon. It builds suspense and sets the stage for an epic conflict, with a new, looming threat on the horizon: the Forgotten Ones, the explorers. Decision to activate the weapon triggers not only the return of humanity's legacy, but the awakening of forces far beyond their understanding. The Forgotten Ones stir. The ship was no longer just a vessel. It was a beacon, calling out to something far older and far darker than humanity could have ever imagined. As the explorers stood in the command center, watching the map flicker and shift, a deep, vibrating hum echoed from within the ship's core. It was a sound they hadn't heard before, a low, resonant tone that seemed to come from the very fabric of space itself. For the first time since they had boarded the ghost ship, a feeling of unease settled over them. They weren't just unlocking a piece of humanity's past, they were awakening something far more dangerous. The Forgotten Ones, the AI's voice, crackled to life again, but this time it was colder, filled with something like fear. They know. The Forgotten Ones know that you have awakened the legacy. They have sensed the shift in the fabric of space. The war has begun. Dr. Kean stepped forward, his heart pounding. What does that mean? How do they know? They're supposed to be dormant, right? Once, long ago, the Forgotten Ones ruled the galaxy, the AI explained, its voice now carrying a weight of sorrow. They were the first beings to travel the stars, to shape the universe as they saw fit. But humanity, humanity was different. You were the first to challenge them, to fight back against their tyranny. And so, the Forgotten Ones were forced to retreat into the darkest corners of the galaxy, biding their time. But the power you've unlocked this weapon, it is a threat to them, one they cannot ignore. The room grew colder as the AI's words sank in. The Forgotten Ones had been the original masters of the galaxy. They were the ones who had shaped its history long before humanity rose to prominence. And now, after millennia of waiting, they were ready to reclaim what they had lost. The explorers could feel it in the air, the shift, the impending storm. Suddenly, the map began to change again, but this time it wasn't showing coordinates or planets. Instead, it revealed something far more unsettling. It showed images of strange, grotesque creatures, whose forms seemed to defy the laws of nature. Their bodies were shifting, flickering in and out of existence, as if they were made of shadow and light. Their faces were distorted, hidden, beneath layers of dark, organic armor. They were the Forgotten Ones, the ancient rulers of the galaxy. They look like shadows, Lieutenant Rhea murmured, her voice filled with dread. Yes, the AI responded. The Forgotten Ones do not exist as physical beings. They are creatures of the void, born of the darkness between stars. They were once flesh, but their power was so great that they transcended their physical forms, becoming something far worse. Dr. Kian looked at the images on the map, his mind racing. So, they're not just waiting, they're already on the move. They've been following humanity for centuries. But why didn't they attack sooner? Why wait until now? Because, the AI said, they could not attack while humanity remained hidden. The weapon you've just activated is a beacon, not just for the legacy of humanity, but for the Forgotten Ones as well. It marks the end of their exile. And now, they are coming to reclaim what they once lost. As the last words left the AI's lips, the ship's systems began to shift. The walls of the command center vibrated with a low growl, as if the ship itself was being pulled into the maelstrom of the impending battle. The lights flickered, and the temperature dropped several degrees. And then, without warning, the AI fell silent. The explorers exchanged nervous glances, uncertainty creeping into their minds. Had they made a mistake by awakening humanity's weapon? Were they now the galaxy's last line of defense against the Forgotten Ones? Or were they simply pawns in a far greater game, one that had been set in motion millennia ago? Suddenly, the ship's exterior cameras displayed a new image, one that made the explorers' hearts stop in their chests. A fleet, but not just any fleet. This was something massive, something beyond anything the explorers had ever seen. A dark armada, stretching across the stars like a shadow in the night. It was the Forgotten Ones. They had arrived. The explorers scrambled to their stations, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. The fleet was unlike anything they could have imagined. Each ship was a twisted, dark form, a grotesque fusion of organic and mechanical parts, constantly shifting and changing as if they were alive. The ships seemed to bleed dark energy as they moved through space, their shapes shifting and warping with every passing second. How long do we have? Rhea demanded, her voice tight with fear. Not long, the AI finally replied, its voice now strained. The Forgotten Ones are already within range. You have only moments before they arrive. You must decide, will you use the weapon to fight back, or will you flee and hope humanity's legacy can protect you? The explorers were frozen, their minds racing. The weapon they had unlocked was their only chance. But could they trust it? Could they activate the weapon and actually stand a chance against the Forgotten Ones? Or would it only unleash even more destruction? Rhea turned to the others, her face set with determination. We don't have a choice. If we run, they'll destroy us all. If we fight, we might just have a chance to stop them. With a deep breath, she pressed the activation sequence. The ship shuddered violently, and a blinding light filled the room as the weapon powered up. The walls around them cracked and groaned as energy surged through the ship. The very air seemed to crackle with raw power. The weapon was awakening. Its true purpose, its full potential, was now in their hands. But just as the weapon was coming to life, the AI's voice cut through the chaos. You must hurry, it urged. The Forgotten Ones are closer than you think. They will not show mercy. The explorers braced themselves as the ghost ship's engines roared to life. They were no longer just passive witnesses to the galaxy's fate. They were now part of the story, humanity's last hope, and perhaps the galaxy's only chance to survive. In this part, The Forgotten Ones are revealed as ancient, powerful beings who can manipulate the fabric of space itself. The Explorers. Decision to activate the weapon forces them into a race against time, as the shadow of the Forgotten Ones grows ever closer. The story continues to build suspense, with the crew facing a terrifying and unknown threat. Their choice to fight might be humanity's last stand, but they will have to trust in the weapon and the legacy of a lost civilization to survive. The roar of the ghost ship's engines filled the air, vibrating through the walls as it shot forward into the vast blackness of space. The weapon had been activated, but what would it truly unleash? The explorers clung to their stations, the ship shaking violently beneath them, a reminder that time was running out. Outside, the dark fleet of the Forgotten Ones moved closer, monstrous ships that bled shadow and energy, each one more terrifying than the last. The explorers were no longer in control of their fate. They had stepped into a battle that would determine the future of the galaxy. Rhea stood at the ship's helm, gripping the controls tightly, her knuckles white. "Do we even know how this weapon works?" she asked, her voice steady but with a hint of fear. "I wish I could answer that," Dr. Keon said, his hands flying over his console, trying to analyze the data pouring in from the ship's systems. "The readings, they're impossible to interpret. The energy signatures are beyond anything I've ever seen. But it's clear, the weapon isn't just a weapon, it's a force. We may be activating something that's not just meant to destroy, but to completely alter reality." Rhea turned to him, her eyes narrowing. "Alter reality?" "That's what the AI said," Keon replied, his voice tight. "This isn't just a weapon of destruction. It's a tool of control. It was designed to reshape the universe, to change the very balance of power. If the Forgotten Ones could have it, they'd rule the stars again. If we activate it, it could rewrite the laws of space itself." Suddenly, the ship's external monitors flickered, showing the first images of the approaching fleet, the dark, shifting silhouettes of the Forgotten Ones' ships. There were hundreds of them, each more ominous than the last. Their presence bent the space around them, distorting the light like a nightmare made flesh. The explorers felt a heavy weight in the pit of their stomachs. The enemy was here, and they were far beyond anything humanity had ever faced. "All systems are ready," the AI said, its voice surprisingly calm, though its tone was heavy with the knowledge of the stakes at hand. "You must decide. The weapon is primed for activation. It will either obliterate the enemy or collapse space itself. The consequences are irreversible. Obliterate or collapse." Rhea echoed, her heart pounding in her chest. "What happens if we use it and fail?" The AI did not answer immediately. It paused, as if calculating the unthinkable. Then it spoke, quieter than before. "If you fail, the universe will unravel. Time and space will fracture. The Forgotten Ones will consume all that is left, and their darkness will spread across the galaxy, devouring everything. But if you succeed, humanity's legacy will be restored, and the galaxy will be free." Rhea swallowed hard, feeling the weight of those words settle deep within her. There was no turning back now. They had activated. The ship surged forward, its speed accelerating as it cut through the dark abyss of space. The fleet of the Forgotten Ones moved closer, their weapons charging, ready to strike. But the ghost ship wasn't just running it, it was drawing the battle. To them, the explorers had made their choice. There was no turning back now. Suddenly, the weapon activated in full force. The entire ship shook violently as a brilliant pulse of energy erupted from its core, spreading outward like a shockwave. The force was unlike anything they had ever experienced. The ship's hull groaned under the pressure, and the lights flickered as the energy coursed through the ship. The ghost ship was now more than just a ship. It was a conduit, a channel for something far beyond human comprehension. The wave of energy collided with the advancing fleet, and an explosion of light erupted across the dark expanse of space. The first ship in the Forgotten One's fleet was hit. Its massive form shattered, breaking apart into countless pieces that scattered like debris in the wind. But that was just the beginning. The pulse of energy expanded, spreading outward in every direction, tearing through the fleet with devastating power. The explorers watched in awe as ship after ship of the Forgotten Ones was consumed by the energy. The ships were no longer just destroyed. They seemed to disintegrate into nothingness, their forms vanishing as if they had never existed at all. The sheer power of the weapon was overwhelming. But just as the tide seemed to turn in humanity's favor, the energy wave slowed, and the ship groaned in protest. The weapon was beginning to drain the ship's power. The feedback from the massive destruction was overwhelming. "We're losing power," Kian shouted. "The weapon's energy is consuming everything. We won't last much longer." Rhea gritted, her teeth, her hands steady on the controls. "We have to hold out. We're not done yet." The dark fleet of the Forgotten Ones was not entirely gone. Their numbers may have been halved, but the remaining ships began to shift, regrouping, reshaping themselves into something else entirely. The creatures of shadow, once bent on destruction, now seemed to be adapting, morphing into new, more terrifying forms, almost like they were learning, evolving in response to the weapon's power. The largest ship of the Forgotten Ones loomed in front of them, far more massive than any of the others, its form shifting like a living nightmare. It seemed to absorb the darkness of space itself, feeding off the very energy the weapon had released. A massive beam of shadow energy erupted from it, slamming into the ghost ship with tremendous force. The ship rocked, alarms blaring as the hull buckled under the pressure. But even as the ship trembled, Rhea felt a surge of defiance rise within her. "This is it," she shouted. "Activate the secondary systems. We're not backing down now." Dr. Kian quickly began rerouting power, activating the backup systems, and sending energy to the weapon once more. The ship's core responded with a violent jolt, and the weapon began to hum again, ready to fire. The remaining Forgotten Ones fleet had learned from their defeat, but they hadn't anticipated humanity's tenacity. The final confrontation was at hand. Rhea slammed her fist onto the activation console, and the weapon flared again, sending a pulse of pure energy so powerful it shattered the laws of space itself. The Forgotten One's flagship, once a fearsome giant, was torn apart as if it were made of paper, its shadowy form crumbling to nothing. The energy waves spread outward, rippling through the remaining ships, erasing them from existence in an instant. But then, as the galaxy seemed to hold its breath, something even darker began to stir. The very fabric of space trembled, and a rift appeared at the edge of the battlefield. The real battle for the galaxy had only just begun. In this part, the weapon's activation leads to an explosive confrontation with the Forgotten Ones, resulting in a massive energy wave that decimates much of their fleet. However, the enemy adapts, leading to an even greater challenge. The explorers realize that the weapon is not just a means of survival, it is a force that could reshape the very fabric of reality, with consequences they may not fully understand. The stakes are higher than ever, and the galaxy's fate hangs in the balance. Asterisk. The shattered horizon, the silence that followed the devastation, felt impossibly loud. The galaxy, once teeming with the activity of starships and civilizations, seemed to hold its breath in the wake of the weapon's unimaginable power. The dark fleet of the Forgotten Ones had been scattered, their ships disintegrating into nothingness, consumed by the wave of energy that had torn through space itself. But even as victory seemed within reach, the explorers knew that this battle was far from over. As Rhea gazed out into the void, her hands gripping the controls of the ghost ship, the distant rift at the edge of the battlefield continued to pulse with an unsettling energy. The weapon had done its job, destroying the fleet, but now it was consuming the ship's power, like a star collapsing in on itself. The humming of the ghost ship's engines had become a low groan, as though it were struggling to stay alive. "What's happening?" Kian asked, his voice strained as he studied the control panels. Ria's eyes narrowed. The rift that had appeared after the final blow to the Forgotten One's flagship wasn't just a tear in space. It was a wound, and wounds always invited something worse. The image on the screens shifted, showing the rift expanding, growing, larger, like a rip in the very fabric of reality itself. The energy was unlike anything they had encountered before. It wasn't just destructive. It felt ancient, primal, like something that had been waiting for this moment. "That rift, Ria," whispered, her voice barely audible. "It's not just a gateway, it's a signal. They were waiting for us to open it." Dr. Kian froze. "Are you saying ... that we've just made it worse?" The AI, which had remained eerily silent for moments, now crackled to life. "You have not only awakened the legacy of humanity, but you have inadvertently opened the door to something far older than the Forgotten Ones. The rift is not a weapon. It is a conduit, a tier between dimensions. The Forgotten Ones sought it as a way to regain their lost power, but they were not the first to come across it." A cold shiver ran down Ria's spine. "What do you mean, not the first?" "Before the Forgotten Ones, there were other beings," the AI continued, its voice now filled with an unnatural calm. "Creatures that existed outside of time itself. They were the first to manipulate the very fabric of space and reality, and they were the ones who created the weapon that humanity unlocked. But when humanity discovered the power of the weapon, they sealed it, fearing that the rift would open once again, allowing those ancient beings to return." The room felt colder as the gravity of the AI's words sunk in. "Are you telling me that opening this rift, we've unleashed something worse than the Forgotten Ones?" Ria asked, her voice trembling. "Yes," the AI replied. "And they are coming." The ship's shaking intensified as the rift grew, its pulsating energy now threatening to tear apart everything around it. The explorers could see strange lights within its distorted shapes, shifting like liquid, too vast and incomprehensible to fully understand. Suddenly, the ship's systems began to flicker erratically, the power draining faster than ever. The rift's pull was too strong, and the energy from the weapon was barely enough to keep the ship intact. "We can't keep this up much longer," Kian shouted. "We need to close the rift, or we'll be sucked into it, along with everything else." "Closing it isn't an option," the AI warned. "Once the rift has been opened, it cannot be sealed again. Not by any force, not by any weapon, not even humanity's legacy." Ria's gaze shifted to the console, her mind racing. "If we can't close the rift, then we have to destroy it. We have to sever the connection between dimensions before these ancient beings can break through." "That's impossible," Kian muttered. "This rift isn't just some tear in space. It's a link to another reality. Destroying it would mean tearing apart the laws of physics themselves. Then we'll have to tear the laws of physics apart," Ria said with a determination that burned in her chest. "We don't have a choice." The final choice. The ghost ship surged forward, the energy of the rift pulling at it like a beast with a hunger beyond understanding. Rhea could feel the weight of the decision they were about to make. The galaxy, no, the entire fabric of existence, would change forever. This was not just a battle for survival. It was the moment when the very nature of reality would be challenged. "Dr. Kian," Rhea said, her voice firm, "we have to act now. We need to focus all the power we have into the core. I don't care what it takes. If we're going to break this rift, we need to release everything." Kian nodded, though his face was pale. "I'll reroute all available energy into the primary system." "But Rhea, this isn't like firing a weapon. If we do this, we might destroy the fabric of space itself." "Then it's a sacrifice we'll have to make," she replied, her eyes steely. "We either stop them here, or we let them destroy everything we've fought for." With a deep breath, Kian turned to his console and began rerouting power to the ship's core. The ghost ship shuddered, its systems buzzing in protest. The walls groaned as energy surged through the ship, gathering within its core. The rift before them seemed to pulse faster, more urgently, as if the entities beyond could feel the ship preparing to strike. Rhea felt her heart race. There was no turning back. The universe would either be consumed by the void or be saved by the power of humanity's legacy, if it worked. "Ready," Kian said through gritted teeth. "This is it. Do it," Rhea ordered. The ship's core ignited with a blast of pure light. Energy poured out in a wave, washing over the rift. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, the rift shuddered violently, and the air around them grew dense with the tension of reality itself about to snap. The light from the core intensified, and for a moment, it seemed like the entire galaxy would be consumed by it. Then silence. The rift collapsed, folding in on itself, snapping shut like the lid of a coffin. The ship groaned as the last remnants of energy bled from its systems, the last flicker of light fading into darkness. The rift was gone. The threat had been stopped, but the ship had paid a terrible price. The explorers staggered, exhausted, as they looked around. The ghost ship's systems were failing, its energy drained. The ancient weapon they had unleashed, the legacy of humanity, had done its job. The forgotten ones were no more. The ancient beings from beyond the rift had been stopped, their passage back into the universe sealed forever. But the ship was dying. Rhea stood in the center of the command room, her face pale and weary. "We did it," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. "But at what cost?" Dr. Kian slowly turned to her, his face grim. "We've stopped the darkness from consuming the galaxy. But the ship... it's not going to survive. And we can't stay here." Rhea looked out into the vast expanse of space, knowing that humanity's future was uncertain. They had won for now, but the consequences of their actions were still unknown. The galaxy was quiet once again. For now, in these final parts, the explorers faced the full force of the consequences of awakening humanity's legacy and the rift that had been opened. The stakes grow higher as they make the ultimate sacrifice to seal the rift and stop the ancient beings from returning. The choice to risk tearing apart reality itself shows the depth of their resolve, but with a price that could alter the future forever.